Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over 2 missile defense sites.
A self-luminous, tic-tac-shaped object emerged from the ocean.
And Bigelow's company, Bass, would receive a quantity of unusual material that had been stashed away and protected at a facility in California. That material was not made here.
I saw an approximately 100-foot equilateral triangle.
What we saw changed our lives and the way we think about everything.
Did you happen to catch the congressional hearing on UFOs or UAPs the other day? This is September 2025. For reference, this is the 4th hearing that we have with Congress, if you include the 2021 Office of the Director of National Intelligence. It's the 3rd if you do not count that. We're going to look at some of the claims made here. They are very explosive, very interesting, very controversial. So let's just get at it. First of all, why am I doing this? Because I'm interested in UFOs. And interestingly, around 2019 is when I got involved into ufology and studying UFOs and that kind of stuff. Right after, unbeknownst to me, the New York Times broke a story of various videos being put out by the Department of Defense, now Department of War, and showing that there were these, what we used to call UFOs. Ironically, the military coined the term UFO. Now we're using the word UAP because flying saucer was a derogatory term. And then, so that was replaced by UFO. Now UFO is, I guess, a derogatory term, and we are calling them now UAPs. So we had our congressional hearing a few days ago. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of this hearing. I'm going to save, I'm going to say the best for last. There's one of the most controversial, or probably the most controversial aspect comes about halfway through it, but I have distilled about a 2.5-hour meeting down to about 9 minutes. So we're going to go through some of this footage and just going to talk about it a little bit. But just to give you, if you haven't been paying attention, you probably have, but if you haven't been paying attention, here's kind of the history leading up to this hearing. So ufology goes back all the way, millennia ago. But modern, especially American ufology, goes back to the 40s. It really started, if you want to go back to Europe, during World War II. We can go push back really until 1890s with the airships. But if you want to start with modern UFO history, ufology and all that kind of stuff, then it really starts with Kenneth Arnold back in June of 1947, followed immediately by Roswell in June, July. There's some debate there about when exactly it happened. And then the Air Force is codified in September of 1947. So the Air Force adopts this UFO problem. Well, they enacted various projects. I'm going to have some videos on all these projects: Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book. To say nothing of Project Twinkle and the old and the quote unquote new Project Grudge. And from 1947 to 1969, the Air Force studied UFOs, and they really did beyond that, but officially they stopped in 1969. We didn't have a congressional hearing since the 50s until 2022. 2021, we had President Trump required a report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We had a report, it's a very short 9 or so page report talking about UFO sightings, if it's a national security issue or not. I had mentioned that I started studying UFOs and all that kind of stuff back in around 2019. I'm in the Air Force. I'm a chaplain in the Air Force Reserves. And for my rank, every rank from captain to lieutenant colonel has to do a certain kind of school. And so for majors, you can either do Air Command and Staff College, or you can do an online master's degree, which is what I did. I did the online master's because why not? I'm an academic. I like getting degrees for free because it was totally free and accredited. So it's a degree in military operational art and science with a concentration in joint warfare. That's a mouthful. So I just normally say military studies. But at the end of the program, you have to write a what I would just call a thesis, a short thesis, but it's a research project. They don't call it thesis. They treat it like one, but it's not really a thesis. And so I asked if I could do mine on UFOs, thinking I'll be laughed out. The instructor said, you can do that if you can connect it to a problem to be solved by the Air Force? Well, the obvious problem from a military point of view is national security. So I wrote on UFOs and how they relate to national security, which is exactly what this 2021, I'm in 21st century now, 2021 report talked about. It talked about flight safety because pilots have reportedly almost hit these things. So there's this 9-page report on the 2021 ODNI report. And so that's in June 26th, I believe, of 2021. In July of 2020, we have another congressional hearing talking about UFOs again with intelligence agencies. In 2023, we have another congressional hearing. I was on active duty during this time, and this is known for David Grush's comments saying that we actually possess captured UFOs as well as biologics, that would be alien life, as it were. And that was 2023. So we didn't have anything in 2024. A lot's going on, though, with various research projects. We had, for example, the project with Robert Bigelow and the government researching Skinwalker Ranch from the mid-90s to early 2000s, which brought in the OSAP program. And actually, that was June 25th, 2021. If you want a good history of all this stuff, there's a couple books I'd recommend to kind of interject this right now. One is The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects by Edward Ruppelt, who headed Project Blue Book to begin with. And another one, we're going to talk about this today. And he actually testified in one of them in front of this congressional hearing we were going to talk about today. Skinwalkers at the Pentagon by James Lukatsky. He's going to be referenced in this hearing. Colin Kelleher and George Knapp is an investigative journalist who is going to be in this hearing. We're going to talk about him and see him give his thoughts here. But there are lots to get kind of getting to consider the history. We have the OSAP program, which stands for Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, in the early 2000s. And we have ATIP after that, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, which was wrongly conflated with OSAP in the 2017 New York Times article. And so we have these congressional hearings on the heels of all this, and we have all these, the 2017 disclosure from the New York Times. And so after that, this kind of just popped in the culture, and there were a lot of books being written at this time throughout the 2000s, and it came to a head with this 2017 article. And so to get to some of what we saw in the hearing, we're going to hear from 1, 2, 3, 4 people, really 5, or I'm only going to show 4 because one is more of a policymaker. And so we're just going to look and see what these guys have to say. I'm going to go ahead and start with Mr. Nusatelli, who was a military police officer in the Air Force.
Between 2003 and 2005, 5 UAP incidents occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Each incident was witnessed by multiple personnel, documented, investigated, and reported up the chain of command. I personally witnessed one of these events and investigated others as they occurred. Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over 2 missile defense sites. I talked to 5 shaken witnesses who described a massive triangular craft larger than a football field that hovered silently for about 45 seconds over their entry control point before shooting away at impossible speed. When another patrol reported a massive triangular craft larger than a C-130 silently floating over the installation. And then I had my own encounter, again in 2005. I was off duty, sitting in my backyard with 2 other police officers when we noticed what first appeared to be a satellite in orbit, but it wasn't acting like a satellite. The light was strange, it was pulsing, and then it started to maneuver. It dropped in elevation. At times it would vanish from view and reappear in a different location in the sky, and eventually it reappeared 200 feet over my house. It was a 30-foot diameter sphere of light.
So we have what would normally be considered credible witnesses of what happened. This is a military police officer, so they're trained. He's trained in detail. He's trained in and to investigate instances of things. And so we have to give people like this credit. I used to think that the whole UFO thing, I didn't give it much thought. But as I studied it over the years, I realized there were a lot of credible people who were, as General Twining and some people say, credible people making reports of incredible things. And so I think this is one example. Of course, we don't have all of the details of what he's talking about, but he's reporting to Congress what he has seen. And there are others as well. We have next Chief Wiggins, who serves in the Navy, and he says this.
A self-luminous, tic-tac-shaped object emerged from the ocean before linking up with 3 other similar objects. The 4 then disappeared simultaneously with a high synchronized, near instantaneous acceleration. I observed no sonic boom and no conventional propulsion signatures.
So with the first person, we have this Vandenberg square, and squares are not uncommon to be referred to in ufology. We have a number of Ryan Graves actually testified in the 2023 hearing about seeing a square with, I think it was a square inside of a sphere or vice versa. But squares are not uncommon to be seen. There are all kinds of, think of just discs like flying saucers. There are all kinds of UFOs that people reportedly see. And so the triangles are also, as Mr. Nusatelli said, very common. And so as he's describing this, I'm thinking it sounds an awful lot like the Phoenix Lights. You got these huge triangular things going very, very slow, and then they ultimately take off as what he says in possible speeds. And then we have the tic-tac shaped craft described by Chief Wiggins. And it's the tic-tac shaped craft that we see in some of these Navy videos from 2004 and 15. And of course, they're also described as tic-tacs earlier on as well. These are some of the more well-known ones nowadays. And so Chief Wiggins is saying that he had seen these, and others had seen them as well. Now, we're going to hear from George Knapp, and this is the person who is one of the co-authors of Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. He is a investigative journalist. He's written a lot. He's kind of known as the UFO journalist, as it were. And he's done a lot of research. I mean, we're not going to go everything that he talks about in here. For example, he goes into Russia and brings back all these UFO files, putting his life in his own hands, as it were, in danger by doing that. But here's what he says.
I have confirmed on the record that Robert Bigelow and a trusted colleague from OSAP met with and negotiated with senior executives at Lockheed Martin and hammered out a deal wherein Bigelow's company, Bass, would receive a quantity of unusual material that had been stashed away and protected at a facility in California. That material was not made here.
Now, that's an important and impressive and controversial claim. So Robert Bigelow is an aerospace engineer. He's one of the most wealthy people around, and he's interested in UFOs. He owns Skinwalker Ranch, which is a well-known ranch that is a site of many paranormal type events, including UFOs. And Bigelow and the U.S. government investigated Skinwalker Ranch for many years between the 1990s and early 2000s. And so what Knapp is saying here is that there was in our possession some kind of material that it was not made here. Now, there's been some claims like this. This goes all the way back to at least Roswell, where you have allegedly somehow acquired these kinds of craft where they've crashed or something, and then we have a retrieval program. We even have aliens, those kind of things. These are not new. In fact, in the 2023 hearing with David Grush, we hear that there are, again, other crash retrieval programs where we not only have craft, and we're going to hear more about this craft, or one craft by George Knapp later, but also biologics. And so what Knapp here is testifying to is that he, according to Bigelow and others, have these we're in possession of these materials that simply were not made here. Here's a video I'd never seen before, and they really don't explain this video. There we go. And so this is the tic-tac shape craft. They don't go into this video. They show it. In fact, the chairwoman of this subcommittee stops George Knapp to show this video, and obviously is weird. It looks a little more like a Tic Tac, or what you think of as a saucer, or in my view, it looks more like a Tic Tac. But they don't really go into a lot of depth on that video, but there you go. It's one of the two videos that showed up, and they're going to show another video here on, and I'll show it to you here in just a few minutes. That is extremely controversial. It's one of a kind, and we're going to check that out. But first, let's hear from Mr. Borland, who also was an Air Force serviceman.
And at approximately 0130, I saw an approximately 100-foot equilateral triangle take off from near the NASA hangar on the base. The craft interfered with my telephone, did not have any sound, and the material it was made of appeared fluid or dynamic. I was under this triangular craft for a few minutes, and then it rapidly ascended to commercial jet level in seconds, displaying zero kinetic disturbance, sound, or wind displacement. Looking across to the flight line, and I see a white light pop up and stop about 100 feet in the air. And as I began walking towards the light, towards the flight line and the track, the light then flies across the base, across the flight line, and as it flies to me, a triangle manifests around the light. I can't tell you if it's active camouflage. I can't tell you if it appeared around the light, but I can tell you that it was a white light, and then it was a triangle. It stopped about 100 feet in front of me and approximately 100 feet above me. My telephone got extremely hot, completely froze, dead. I remember how thick it was. It was between 1 to 2 stories thick, equilateral triangle. I could never see the top of it, and the edges were 90 degrees. There were 4 lights in total, 1 light on each corner, and a larger light in the center, 2 to 3 times the size of the corner lights. But what was really odd was the outside. The best way to describe it is like looking at a James Webb telescope picture where you have the colors and then the black background. So the craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft. I'm under this for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then the center light flashes 2 to 3 times, no sound, immediately shoots up to commercial jet level minimum, in my opinion, and I immediately feel static electricity all over my body, and then I smell the smell of after a thunderstorm or lightning storm, that really strong summer thunderstorm smell. Gets up to flight level. I'm trying to get my phone reset, and I can only see the center light at this point. If I didn't actually see it take off, I would have thought it was a star. And then it hovers up there, and it begins to slowly move due east out over the Atlantic Ocean. I finally got my phone reset. The entire thing was about 15 minutes.
So Mr. Borland is, he was a geospatial person with the Air Force for a number of years, and very similar testimony to David Grush says that he has been targeted because of his coming out as a whistleblower about these UFOs and what he's experienced. He lost his position, lost his job, feels like I think he said he felt like he was unsafe. Grush was certainly, he reported that he felt unsafe and had been threatened. But Borland has come out and says he's lost everything from coming out. And that's a lot of what this hearing was. The hearing was really about being able to come out, and it's about transparency. It's about UAP transparency. And so that's why they have another policymaker, who's the 5th person on this panel, talking about how we can make it such that people can feel safe coming forward to be able to talk about their experiences. And a lot happened after the 2021 report as well. There have been a lot more reports since then. They're trying to normalize channels for people to be able to report things. There's still a lot of stigma. And we have now that after the UAP task force and another ridiculous acronym, we now have ARROW, which is the All Domain Anomalous, Resolution Office, which, as they testified in this hearing, was presided over by a gentleman named Kirkpatrick, I think that name is right, who was, it sounded like a lot of the old Blue Book stuff where they wanted to kind of just sweep things under the rug and trying to make things more transparent now. So that's why they held this hearing, was to try to promote this kind of transparency. So, but moving along, we're going to go into some of the question times, and this is where we're almost get to the most controversial part of the hearing.
What we saw changed our lives and the way we think about everything. It was incredibly profound.
What Nusatelli is saying is that, this is normal for people to have experienced these kinds of things, is that they have undergone a significant change in their thinking about even the fundamentals of reality. I remember watching Lou Elizondo's Unidentified show on the History Channel. There was a person who was deployed in the Middle East who was looking through some kind of night vision goggles in the sky and saw what he reported to be UFOs, and said it was a real faith shaker for him. It's normally not the case that people have some kind of weird experience like this and it doesn't change them in some way. It's very typical that these experiences change people and make them think differently about reality. In fact, it's what Jacques Vallée says, who's one of the probably the most premier ufologist alive, who started back around Blue Book with J. Allen Hynek and has written prolifically throughout the decades on this topic. And he says that whatever these things are, he doesn't think they're aliens. The aliens are interdimensional beings. They're trying to control our worldview and our thinking. And so, as Mr. Nusatelli said, it had a profound impact on his life and how he thinks. Now, listen to what Mr. Burchett says in asking George Knapp about some of this material, where it's found.
Who are the contractors that have this material, the corporations?
Well, one of them is Lockheed.
So Knapp is naming Lockheed as one of the contractors who have this material. Now, what's interesting about this and what they testify to and what we even know from before is that the government, up until the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act in 1966, the government could pretty much keep secrets, and it wasn't really hard to do that for them. But in 1966, Congress passed the Freedom of Information Act, which allowed the public to to request certain documents from the government or different kind of agencies. A great book on that topic is called Clear Intent. This is a well-known book in ufology. Clear Intent, the government cover-up of the UFO experience. What does the government know about UFOs and why won't it tell us? Forward by J. Allen Hynek. This book goes over FOIA and the use of FOIA to get documents, and basically the involvement of various government agencies, CIA, FBI, those kind of things. Great books. I'll leave a link for all these in the description as well. But what has happened is the government has become wise, and they realize that if they keep whatever documents or things in possession of the actual government, they are liable to be FOIA'd or requested by the public. But if they can put these documents, or if they have these kinds of craft or whatever, if they can put them in the hands of private contractors or private agencies like Lockheed, those companies are not liable to a FOIA request because they're not a government agency, they're a contract agency. So the government can kind of sweep whatever they want under the rug, as it were, by giving it to a private company that is not susceptible to a FOIA request. And so Knapp here is saying that Lockheed has some of these foreign things, as it were. Now, this is the video that is the most controversial part that came out of the hearing. I'm just going to let it play here.
This was taken October 30th of 2024. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an orb, or this object, off the coast of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile. That you cannot see that drone, and so I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll see exactly what it does.
Here we go. Two MQ-9 Reapers, one watching and one firing a Hellfire missile, October 30th, 2024, off the coast of Yemen. We can see a craft appears to be, whatever this thing is, appears to be traveling somewhat quickly. Of course, some people say it's just parallax over the water. Here comes a missile. It's hit. Not clear what's going on here. They have different debris that seem to be following the craft. This is a zoomed out picture.
This is when it zoomed out, so you can still see it traveling.
So that is the most explosive claim that came out of this hearing, that you have this whatever, this what's going to call it UFO, flying and is hit by a missile and allegedly is not destroyed by this Hellfire missile. And so later on in the hearing, every one of these people on that are being questioned, except for the policy person, poor policy person, I don't have him in here, I don't remember his name. He's important, but he didn't testify to what we're talking about. He's just talking about policy, which is important, obviously. But they're all going to say that they don't know of anything that can withstand a Hellfire missile. This has been scrutinized a good bit in the last couple days. It just came out a few days ago. In fact, I'm recording this on a Friday night, and it came out Tuesday. So there's been some analysis of this, and there's been some questioning about what's going on here with this. First of all, we don't know a lot about the video. We know that supposedly it was taken by an MQ-9 Reaper and shot at by a Reaper with a Hellfire missile, and then hit. But there's been people questioning what's going on. There's been people questioning, like, what are the fragments that are supposedly following this thing? Is it part of it to break off and just keep going? Or is it the fact that, given the relationship between the Reaper that's taking the video to both the object and the ocean, does it just look like the missile went through it and it didn't damage it more than just breaking some pieces off? Or is it the case that it really, that it did more damage than we think it did, and it's actually slowly descending into the ocean? There's been lots of discussion on that and analysis on that, and there's been back and forth on what's going on here. But the people who are testifying in the Congress seem to be pretty convinced that what this actually is a Hellfire missile somehow striking an orb or some kind of UFO. This is not the first time that the U.S. has shot at UFOs. In fact, in his book, again, if you're interested in the history of ufology, this is a must-read by Ed Ruppold. He says on page 1, the very beginning of this book, if you want a good hook for your readers or whatever, then this is how you do it. In the summer of 1952, a United States Air Force F-86 jet interceptor shot at a flying saucer. Well, there you go. That's the report by Ruppold. We have the same kind of reports given to us by, say, Peru and Iran. We have this in Leslie Kean's book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, by Leslie Kean. And she actually is one of the 3 people who broke the 2017 story in the New York Times. It's a great book from the point of view of what do different militaries around the world have to do with UFOs. And she recounts that there were various countries who had shot at UFOs, and some have reportedly hit them, and they said that the UFO really just absorbed the round. So this is not the first time that it's been reported that they've either been shot at or hit, but this is the only one that I'm aware of that we have pictures of. Going back to the video here.
And you had, you reported James Lakatsky came to you.
Another one of the authors of this book.
With government possession of NHI craft and how they ultimately gained entry. Can you testify to the veracity of that claim?
Dr. Lakatsky is an honorable man who served most of his career with the DIA, a very trusted, high-level rocket scientist and intelligence analyst who inspired the OSAP program, as I said earlier. And in full disclosure, I've co-written 2 books with him. He dropped this on myself and our other co-author out of the blue. And it took 14 months for us to get DOPSR approval for him to release 2 sentences on that. He said this craft, we had managed to get inside of it. It had no wings, no rotor, no tail. It had no fuel tanks. They didn't know how it flew or how it was operated. It clearly looked like it was aerodynamic, but he would not go further. He's a by-the-book guy, and until he gets clearance to say more about that, I don't think we're going to hear much more. But it's not ours. It wasn't ours. We didn't make it. We didn't know who made it and how it was built and how it operated. We've got at least one, and I don't know. I think that's enough confirmation that we do have recovered
Leslie,
discs and materials.
So another very explosive claim. We have this claim made in 2023 by David Grush. And I came out on this and talked about this. I think it was on my other channel, my classical theology channel, about David Grush and how we should think about this. And I was very skeptical about it. I mean, this has been going on since at least Roswell, where we're told that we have crash craft and even aliens or whatever. And I was very skeptical of Grush. I'm still skeptical of all this because I'm not from Missouri, but I'm kind of, show me the evidence, show me the money, as it were. But I do trust in general George Knapp, and I don't know either one of them, or James Lukatsky, but they seem to be very well respected in the government and these different agencies. And Knapp is saying here, putting his integrity and journalistic reputation on the line here in front of Congress, saying that Lukatsky told him that we have one of these ships. This is a rather explosive claim, and while I do believe there is a UFO phenomena out there, I have been, like Jacques Vallée and others, skeptical that it's extraterrestrial. But I would be, obviously interested to know what these things are if we do have these. But I'm skeptical until we see these things, whether we have them or not, and what they really are. I'm not saying they don't have something. It's hard to say. You can't really give an intelligent analysis of something that's just being talked about in these terms that Nat talked about here in front of Congress. But it's hard to just dismiss them and just kind of hand wave them away because they're credible people, especially Lukatsky and Knapp as an investigative journalist. So it's interesting that they're putting this out there in front of Congress. You want to trust them, but at the same time, this is a very high explosive claim, and I am always skeptical of these kind of claims. I do believe there's a UFO phenomena, but I'm always skeptical that we have these kind of things in our possession. But I am willing to be disproven if they do come out with these things and they can be studied from an open scientific way, a peer evaluation kind of way, and they say, yeah, this is not ours, this is not human in some way. Then that would change my mind. But I'm skeptical of these kind of things. I do believe this phenomenon exists. I just don't think that they're alien. But here we go.
You have the perception, at least I do, based on your story, that this involves the U.S. government. Whatever you saw involves the U.S. government.
That is 100% my opinion then and now.
The Borland is saying here that the thing he saw, this enormous triangle that was so fantastic. From what has been said here from the congressman and him, he thinks it's part of the government, which is strange. I don't know exactly what he thinks it is, whether it's something that's been reverse engineered, but he does seem to indicate that we have things that, from just going back and remembering what he said in the overall hearing, he didn't want to say a lot in front of the normal congressional hearing. He wanted to go into a skiff where he could speak about things in private about secrets and not have to worry about. You have to be in the need to know, have the right clearance, and have a legal right to know all this kind of stuff. But he seemed to indicate that we have things that we probably shouldn't have. So I don't know what he means here by it's ours and the government, whether it's reversed engineered or just something that we have. But he seems to think that overall his testimony is that we have possession and there is this UFO phenomenon. It's not like a whistleblower on our own technology, but he thinks it's something else. But he says here somehow it's related to what we have in the United States.
Usually when the events were occurring, we were all together. There'd be 40, 60, 100 people on duty during these encounters.
Really?
Yeah.
All seeing it at the same time?
Yes, these encounters were playing out while we were on duty, and we were responding and investigating in real time as they occurred.
Now, it's important to understand that we're taking these folks at their word. They're not really demonstrating. I was trying to figure out, what are the pros and cons of what's being said here, and what are some of the counter arguments that might be given. You got to try to look at everything from both sides. And with any kind of testimony like this, if you don't have anything documenting what's going on, or taking people at their word, which you would want to do their testimony before Congress and everything. And a lot of ufology is, well, really all of it is reports. In fact, J. Allen Hynek said we don't study UFOs. He was the chief scientific contractor for Blue Book back in the 50s and 60s. He said we don't study UFOs, we study UFO reports. And so when we get these reports from people, you don't have anything documented usually. Especially people before, there were cameras everywhere and that kind of thing. People don't have any kind of documented evidence, but we could document this. You go back and see, back on the police blotters and whatever was going on. Is this the case that 40, 1,600 people were there and witnessed these kind of things or not? Taking him at his word here, but these are not unusual or uncommon claims when it comes to reporting UFOs. And we have very credible people, from airline pilots, military pilots, CIA agents, normal people every day who are seeing very strange things. As I think it was 20 again said that they've got very credible people giving reports about incredible things. He continues.
The two square objects were at least as large as a football field. The second encounter, they think it was much larger than a football field. We're talking like flying buildings. The object I saw was about 30 feet in diameter.
And to confirm, you were not the only person that saw this.
Correct.
I think I was also told that there was also reports of this in a police blotter in the area. Can you confirm that?
Yes, that's the documentation that I maintained from the original event and turned into Arrow and the FBI.
So he is saying that he turned in these documents to Arrow, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, who now is a UFO investigative body, as well as the FBI. So we know we're taking them their testimony before Congress, which if you lie, you can get in trouble. And they're also turning these documents, some of them are turning these documents into the UFO investigative body, Arrow, and the FBI. So we have here again, for the third time in 4 years, in the last 4 years if you include the DOD&I report, but just congressional hearings have 3 in the last 2 years. They have 2022, 2023, and then 2025. Other things going on as well. We have documents being disclosed. And this is what people had been fighting for, like with NICAP, with Donald Kehoe and others back in the 50s and 60s. They were just really wanting to get these congressional hearings. And we're getting them now. We're getting a lot of them now repeatedly. And there is a push for transparency and disclosure. And that is exactly what this hearing was about. And so there's a lot of pushback on this. I see people in the news, when I look at the comments, people saying, well, this is a red herring from what's going on in the real news. I mean, they want to take our attention away from other things and just look at this. But it is a significant issue. It does have national security implications. Other governments are also looking into it. We know the Russians are doing that. NAP testified to that as well. And I'll leave a link to the actual full-length congressional hearing in the description as well. But interesting hearing. I want to know what you have to think about it. So if you want to leave a comment about what you thought about the hearing, if you have a question, whatever you want to say, please leave a comment. If you like the video, please like it so it can be seen and support the channel. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And thanks for watching. This is interesting stuff, and it is cutting edge. This is just a few days ago with Congress. So hope you enjoyed that. Hope you can check out the actual hearing, check out some of the books I'll leave for you in the description. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.